So clear, he said, the construction of the universe in accordance with Euclid's axioms, theorems, and postulates is not in accordance with the laws of motion. One of the axioms used by Euclid in proof of other axioms and postulates reads, figures may be freely moved in space without change in shape or size. If this is true, the space between the heavenly bodies is a void, a vacuum. If this is true, the theory of a non resistant, pressureless, uniform ether of space is tenable. If this is true, the heavenly bodies must hold themselves in their relative orbits by their mutual attraction and the impetus of their motion. If, on the contrary, it can be clearly shown that figures cannot be freely moved in space without change of shape or size, then a fundamental axiomatic Euclidean principle is not true. It is herein contended that figures cannot move 1 inch in space without change in shape and size, for this entire universe of motion is one of varying but repetitive pressures. An Euclidean indefinite straight line reaching out to infinity is not possible in this universe of varying pressures. The varying pressures of space are curved. They represent expressions of the energy of motion. All energy of motion expresses itself in waves. All waves are opposed spirals and limited in dimensions. All opposed spiral waves accumulate mass and simultaneously redistribute that accumulation. All accumulating mass is aiming toward gyroscopic perfection of motion and toward perfection of cubic crystallization. All diffusing mass is aiming away from gyroscopic stability and away from the simple cubic crystallization toward amorphous complexity of crystallization. All direction is the direction of opposing pressures. The direction of all opposing pressures is spiral. All direction is therefore curved. All curves are spiral. All orbits are spiral. They are all conic sections. A parabolic or hyperbolic orbit is impossible in this universe of pressures. Any anti-clockwise orbit which cuts the base of its cone of measured energy is regenerated in the opposed cone of the wave, and its orbit becomes a clockwise orbit of another system. An object freely moving in space must move in a curved spiral line, whether that object be a planet, a corpuscle, or a ray of light, or any other expression of energy. Further, any expression of energy in this universe must end where it began. It must be curved. Furthermore, the curve is never a circle. It is a spiral, and its convolutions from its beginning to its ending run the whole gamut of effects of motion in speed, temperature, planes, and pressures. Furthermore, no curved spiral of motion ending where it began traverses the universe in its journey. The conclusion of Einstein that the universe must be spherical because all direction is curved is based on the assumption that the direction of motion is curved, circular, or elliptical, and traverses the whole universe in its passage. No mass or body or other expression of motion in any state can pass the boundary plane of its own wave of energy. Every effort of energy sets its own dimensions. Its boundaries are limited by that effort. Energy reproduces itself and thus transfers its expression throughout the universe from wave to wave, but there are dividing walls where motion cease and begin again, and where all mass disappears to reform again. Mass is energy. Energy accumulates as mass and is redistributed in accordance with the increasing and decreasing pressures which it is able to generate. He was just
Beautiful.
He was so on it. I got to finish this next paragraph. A corpuscle is a mass, just as a planet is a mass. An atom is a mass, just as a solar system is a mass. The pressures which an atom of hydrogen can develop varies vastly from that which an atom of radium can develop. They compare with one another as a sewing machine motor compares with a high voltage power plant. All masses, whether they are light units, planets, or suns, are compressions and expansion pumps which hold themselves together for a time in greater or less proximity according to the various ratios of their respective compression and expansion powers in order to simulate the forms being thought out as idea by the image making facility of the one universal mind. It is a fundamental principle of physics that the slightest change in pressure of any substance changes its value. A change of temperature is one indicator of a change of pressure. Every inch of the universe varies in temperature. Every inch must therefore vary in pressure. Every atom varies in pressure from its exterior to its nucleus. If its temperature is changed, its volume also changes. Also, every kind of atom varies from every other kind in volume, temperature, and all other dimensions. Every kind of atom is in a different plane, and each plane is the pressure wall of the varying pressure components or compartments, which divides the universe of motion into pressure zone. Space is made up of atoms of these varying pressures. If an object cannot freely move at the Earth's surface without expanding or contracting to adjust itself to the varying pressures, how can it do so in space? The answer comes back from tradition. But space is a void. Is it? It is densely packed with atoms of high octaves, which we cannot see, but which are not beyond the power of our instruments to detect, even if our thinking cannot reveal them to us. In later volumes, the spectroscopic proof of a space of motion will be given. For the purpose of this volume, let us continue or consider this subject in reference to masses, which we can see. You
It's awesome.
so the spectroscopic proof of space in motion is these wave
Yeah.
conjugations.
Right. Well, that's the starting point, and then they layer their theory, and the theory becomes the god,
Like he said, the answer
volcano
comes
god.
back from tradition, but space is a
Yeah,
void.
yeah, and they get
They're
and then
back to
it's
that stupidity.
high heresy just to question it.
That the stupidity of that. And I'm just like, wow.